I have to say, this Ferrari decision is one of those moves that tells you everything about how Formula One really works when the cameras stop rolling. Because on the surface, it looks simple, almost obvious, but underneath it is a mix of loyalty, timing, leverage, and a very specific kind of patience that only a few drivers are willing to show. According to reports, Charles Leclerc has agreed to stay with Ferrari on a new multi-year arrangement, and while the team has not officially laid out every detail, the clear message is that he is not just passing through Maranello, he is planting himself even deeper into the place that has shaped his entire top-level career. And honestly, that is the first thing worth understanding here. This is not just a driver renewing paperwork. This is a driver doubling down on a dream that has already tested his nerve more than once. For me, that is exactly why this story matters. It's easy to talk about contracts like they are dry business decisions, but in reality, they are often emotional bets on the future, and Leclerc has just made a very public one. He has been with Ferrari in one form or another for nearly a decade, and the longer this relationship goes on, the more it starts to look less like a standard team-driver arrangement and more like a long, complicated partnership built on hope, pressure, and the stubborn belief that the next big breakthrough is still waiting just around the corner. What makes that even more interesting is that the next breakthrough has not arrived yet. Ferrari have not won a race in 2026 so far. They are still chasing the pace setters, and yet Leclerc still committed. That is not the move of a driver who is chasing the easiest path. That is the move of a driver who has decided the reward is worth the waiting, even if the waiting has already taken longer than anyone at Maranello probably wanted. The truth is, Leclerc could have looked around. Every elite driver does. Managers scan the grid, watch the market, compare futures, weigh politics, and quietly ask the question nobody wants to say out loud. Where is the best chance to win next? But according to the reporting, the alternatives were not especially appealing. Mercedes and McLaren were likely spoken for, Aston Martin hadn't taken the leap people expected, and that leaves a star driver with a familiar garage, familiar people, and a familiar problem. Is staying with the known challenge smarter than gambling on a new one? In this case, Leclerc appears to have answered yes, and I think that says a lot about both the man and the moment. He knows Ferrari inside out. He knows the rhythms, the expectations, the pressure, the stories, and the strange ability this team has to make every little development feel bigger than life. He also knows Fred Vasseur extremely well, and that relationship is not some side note. It's part of the foundation here. Vasseur was with him in junior categories at ART, was there again at Sauber when Leclerc made his F1 debut, and has been his team boss since joining Ferrari in 2023. In a sport where trust can vanish faster than grip in a sudden shower, that kind of continuity is priceless. It means Leclerc is not walking blind into uncertainty, and Ferrari are not trying to build around someone who needs every detail translated twice. They already speak the same competitive language. They already know what the other expects. That alone probably removes a lot of noise. And there is noise everywhere in Formula One. Let's be honest. Every team radio message gets turned into a debate, every facial expression gets treated like a legal document, and every contract rumor gets inflated until it sounds like a royal announcement. So when Leclerc stays calm and stays put, that's not boring, that is strategic. He is choosing the version of his career that keeps him close to the thing he wants most, a world title in red. Now that dream has been hanging over him for years. He joined Ferrari's Junior Academy in 2016, stepped up to the factory team in 2019 after his season with Sauber, and quickly became the kind of driver teams build identity around. He's quick, he's precise over one lap, and when the car is right, he can look like one of the most dangerous qualifiers in the sport. The numbers back up a huge part of that reputation. He has 8 wins in 52 podiums for the Scuderia across just over 7 seasons, and he's already climbed to become Ferrari's second most experienced driver in Formula One history, behind only Michael Schumacher. That is not a casual statistic. That places him in an unusually rare category of Ferrari history, the sort of category that comes with a lot of expectation and very little forgiveness. And yet, here is the twist. Even with all of that, the major prize still hasn't arrived. Ferrari last won the driver's title in 2007 and the constructor's title in 2008. That's a long stretch by any standard. And at Ferrari, it becomes almost mythical because every season adds more weight to the silence. That silence is exactly why Leclerc's commitment feels so important. He is not signing because the job is done. He is signing because the job is still unfinished. There's also a very human layer to this that I think people sometimes miss when they reduce the sport to lap times and strategy calls. Leclerc's intensity over the radio, his sharpness in interviews, and his occasional frustration are often interpreted as impatience. Sometimes they are, but they are also evidence of how much this means to him. When a driver keeps pushing the team in public, it can sound like tension, but it can also sound like belief. The kind of
that refuses to settle for polite failure. He is not acting like someone who is content with a good season. He is acting like someone who wants the whole thing, the full trophy, the big moment, and he wants it wearing Ferrari red. That matters because Ferrari is not just any team, it is the team, at least in terms of history, symbolism, expectation, and the level of emotion it draws out of fans and employees alike. The Tifosi are not casual spectators, they are a force, and Leclerc has become one of the figures they attach that passion to. He is loved at Maranello, respected trackside, and treated almost like an emblem of what Ferrari hopes to be, talented, fiery, and impossible to ignore. When a driver has that kind of connection to a fan base, the bond is harder to break, but it's also harder to fake. People can tell when the story is real. This one feels real. That does not mean it's simple. Ferrari are still in a fight to build a car that can genuinely challenge the best. Starting the season stronger than last year is a step, yes, but it is not the finish line. Leclerc knows that, Ferrari know that, and anyone pretending otherwise is probably trying a little too hard to sound upbeat. The gap to the front still exists, and in Formula One, a gap is never just a gap, it's a message. It says your development has to be sharper, your execution has to be cleaner, and your margins for error are gone. So why commit now? Because timing in racing is its own kind of gamble, and sometimes the best decision is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Leclerc is betting that Ferrari can get there, and Ferrari are betting that he is the right driver to carry them there. That mutual bet is the backbone of the story. Sources say the previous arrangement ran at least until the end of 2027 with options, and this new deal moves him beyond 2028, which means the relationship is now set to continue well into his 30s, and likely longer if both sides choose to extend again. That is a serious statement of faith. It tells you Ferrari are not treating him as a short-term solution. They are treating him as a long-term pillar. And from Leclerc's side, staying that long is not just a career move, it's a legacy move. If he does become a world champion, he clearly wants the story to be written at Ferrari. There's a reason that idea has so much weight. Winning elsewhere might bring the trophy, but winning here would bring the kind of immortality that Formula One only gives to a handful of drivers. That's the real lure. Not just success, but meaning. Not just victory, but the right kind of victory. Now let me be a little honest here. Staying with Ferrari is brave, but it's also a little risky, and I mean that in the best possible way. A safer career path might have been to go somewhere with less drama and more immediate certainty, but elite sport rarely rewards the timid. It rewards conviction, and Leclerc has chosen conviction over convenience. That's the sort of choice people respect, even when they're not sure it will pay off. And there's another layer that makes this all the more compelling. Ferrari have Hamilton under contract through at least the end of 2027, and the British driver has also made clear that he is not thinking about stopping anytime soon. So Ferrari's driver picture is stable for the foreseeable future, which is both a luxury and a challenge. Stability helps because it lets the team focus on the machine rather than the passenger list, but it also raises the stakes because once you lock in two big names, the car has to perform. There's no hiding behind uncertainty anymore. The team has to deliver. That, in a weird way, may be the most important part of Leclerc's decision. He's helping Ferrari create a period of certainty at the driver level, so the team can throw everything at the car, the power unit, the processes, and the development race. In other words, he's making it easier for Ferrari to stop thinking about who's in the garage and start thinking about how to beat the frontrunners. And that's where the real business begins. People love to debate drivers, but championships are won by systems. A strong driver can elevate a bad system only so far. A great system can elevate a strong driver into greatness. Ferrari are trying to build the second version, and Leclerc sticking around suggests he believes that possibility still exists. Maybe that's the deepest clue in the whole story. He's not just staying because he has nowhere else to go. He's staying because he still sees something worth chasing. And in Formula One, hope is not a fluffy word. It's a competitive asset. It's the reason teams keep investing after setbacks, the reason drivers keep believing after tough Sundays, and the reason fans keep showing up even when they know disappointment may be waiting at the next corner. Leclerc has now tied his future to that hope more firmly than before, and Ferrari will be hoping that this is the moment where all those years of investment finally start to look like a title plan instead of a promise. I think there's something admirable about that. Not naive, admirable. Anyone can jump ship when things stall. It takes more nerve to stay, to keep pushing, and to say publicly that the dream is still alive even when the scoreboard has not yet cooperated. That kind of commitment can sound romantic, and maybe it is, but it's also competitive. It tells the rest of the paddock that Ferrari have
lost their crown jewel. It tells the engineers that their most important driver still believes. It tells the fans that the story is not over. And maybe, just maybe, it tells rivals that this is not the moment to relax just because Ferrari still need to prove themselves. There is one more thing worth watching, though, and this is where the story gets quietly interesting. Because once a driver like Leclerc commits, the internal pressure changes. Expectations do not disappear, they sharpen. A renewed deal does not buy patience forever, it buys focus. It gives Ferrari a clear answer to the biggest question in the garage, which is who their future is built around. That clarity can be powerful, but it also means the team will be judged even more harshly if the results do not come. The bond gets stronger, yes, but so does the accountability. And in a place like Ferrari, accountability is never in short supply. So the next phase is not about whether Leclerc loves Ferrari, we already know that. The next phase is whether Ferrari can finally give him the kind of car that makes the rest of this decision look brilliant instead of merely heartfelt. That is the open question hanging over everything. Because if the team finds the missing performance, this contract could look like the moment Ferrari locked in a championship leader at exactly the right time. If they do not, then the loyalty will still be admirable, but the frustration will only grow louder. Either way, this is a story with real stakes, and not the kind that disappear after the next headline cycle. It shapes the future of one of the sport's biggest names and one of its most powerful teams. And that is why this move matters more than the usual contract chatter. It is about identity, it is about trust, it is about whether Ferrari and Leclerc can turn a long relationship into the thing both have wanted for years, a title partnership worthy of the history surrounding them. I will say this much as a personal view. I like the move, not because it is certain to work, but because it is honest about what racing really is. The biggest victories usually come from people who are willing to stay in the fight long enough for the fight to change. Leclerc has done exactly that. He has chosen the hard route, the emotional route, and the route that keeps the dream alive in the only garage where that dream would feel fully complete. Now Ferrari just have to do the part that really counts. They have to make the car worthy of the driver, and they have to do it before patience turns into pressure, because in Formula One, that line is always closer than it looks. There's also a broader market angle here that makes the timing feel smarter than it first appears. When top drivers look around the paddock, they're not just asking which team has the flashiest logo or the loudest hospitality area. They're asking which team has a believable path to winning over multiple seasons, which leadership group is stable enough to survive a rough patch, and which project actually has enough momentum to justify staying put while the rest of the field keeps reshuffling itself. In that context, Ferrari look less like a risky nostalgia play and more like a serious long-term bet. They have history, resources, fan support, technical depth, and a driver who already understands the entire culture from the inside. That combination is not easy to replace. So while some people may look at this deal and say, well, of course he stayed, the more accurate view is that Ferrari and Leclerc have both chosen continuity at a moment when continuity has become a competitive advantage. The grid is full of short-term thinking because short-term thinking is easier to sell. Long-term commitment is harder because it requires patience, and patience is a rare currency when the stopwatch is the judge. Leclerc is effectively telling the sport that he is willing to wait for the right breakthrough rather than chase a quick reset somewhere else. And I have to admit, that's a refreshing stance in an era when everyone loves to act as though the grass is always greener 2 garages away. Sometimes the grass is just freshly painted in a different shade of team branding. Ferrari also gains something practical that goes beyond sentiment. They remove doubt. They remove the awkward yearly questions about whether their lead driver is drifting toward the exit. They remove the background static that can distract engineers, strategists, and even fans from the real target, which is performance. With Leclerc secured, every conversation becomes more focused. Now the only thing that matters is building a car that can use his strengths. That sounds simple, but in Formula One, it is anything but simple. Leclerc thrives when he can attack from the front, extract big speed from a lap, and work with a car that gives him confidence on entry and stability through the middle phase of a corner. When he has that feeling, the lap time often appears like magic to the outside world. Of course, it's not magic, it's precision, feedback, and the ability to push without crossing the line. Ferrari know that, the sewer knows that, and that's why having the same people together for longer matters so much. The more familiar the relationship, the more detailed the feedback, and the faster the team can translate a driver's feeling into a technical direction. That kind of shared language can shave off confusion in a sport where confusion is expensive. There's a temptation to think that because Leclerc and Ferrari have not yet reached the finish they want, the relationship must be under strain, but that's too simple. Strong competitive relationships are often loud, they are often emotional, they often include frustration, because both sides
deeply enough to demand more. If nobody cared, the messages would be polite and the project would already be dead. Instead, what we see is the opposite. We see a driver who keeps pressing, a team that keeps investing, and a management group that keeps backing the core idea. That does not eliminate pressure, but it gives pressure a purpose. And in a team like Ferrari, purpose matters. Their entire brand is built on the idea that racing should mean something beyond a result sheet. It should mean pride, legacy, and a connection to people who have poured their lives into the team. Leclerc fits that environment because he does not act like a detached employee. He acts like someone who feels the weight of the badge. That can be difficult on bad days, but on good days, it becomes fuel. You can hear it in how seriously he treats every missed chance. You can see it in the way he responds when the car is not where it should be. He is not playing a part. He is living inside the project, and that matters more than many fans realize. Because the best drivers often do more than drive quickly. They help define the temperature of the whole organization. If the leader is engaged, the team senses it. If the leader is detached, the team senses that too. Ferrari are banking on the first version, and so far the bet makes sense. The New Deal also creates an interesting contrast with the rest of the top tier. Some teams are in the middle of long, delicate construction projects. Some are waiting for the next big regulation shift to change the competitive order. Some are relying on one strong season to prove a broader point. Ferrari, by locking in Leclerc, are signaling something else. They believe the basic structure is already there, and now they want to refine it rather than rebuild it. That is a subtle but important distinction. It means they are not treating this like a rescue mission. They are treating it like a sharpening exercise. There's a lot of power in that mindset because it allows the team to avoid dramatic overcorrections every time a weekend goes slightly wrong. The danger, of course, is that confidence can turn into complacency if the results never catch up. That is why the next phase matters so much. The contract itself is the easy headline. The harder story is whether the engineering side can match the loyalty being shown on the driver's side. Ferrari cannot live on sentiment forever. The stopwatch does not care how moving the announcement sounds. It cares about pace, tire management, pit execution, and whether the package can actually fight at the front over a full season. Leclerc extending his stay raises the expectation level because it removes one excuse. Nobody can say the team is waiting for clarity about the lead driver. That clarity is now here. So the only remaining question is whether Ferrari can build around that clarity fast enough to matter. I think that is where the emotional pull of the story becomes so strong. There is something deeply human about a driver choosing to stay with the same family after years of ups and downs, because most people understand that kind of loyalty. We all know what it is like to stay with a project, a place, or a group because we believe the turning point is still ahead. Most of us don't do it in a 1,000-horsepower machine on a global stage, of course, which is probably for the best because my parallel parking already has enough drama. But the feeling is recognizable. You keep going because you still believe the story can end the right way. That is what Leclerc is doing, and that is also why the move carries more weight than a simple contract extension. It says something about character. It says something about ambition. It says that the dream is not dead just because the timeline has been longer than expected. There is also the matter of leadership inside Ferrari, and here I think people should pay close attention to how much of this deal reflects trust in the people above the garage. Leclerc's respect for John Elkann and Benedetto Vigna is reportedly strong, and that matters because a driver at this level needs to believe that the organization above him understands what it takes to win, not just what it takes to market a famous name. Ferrari have often carried the burden of being admired and judged at the same time, which is a difficult balance to manage. The larger the brand, the larger the spotlight, and the smaller the room for mistakes. A driver staying in that environment has to know the hierarchy is aligned, or else every season turns into a political weather report. This deal suggests that, at least for now, Leclerc believes the internal picture is stable enough to keep building. He trusts the structure, he trusts the plan, and perhaps most importantly, he trusts that the people steering the ship understand the urgency of the moment. Because urgency is the hidden theme of this whole story. Ferrari are in a world where they cannot afford to drift. Leclerc is in a phase where he does not want to spend the rest of his 20s waiting for next year. The new agreement says both sides know that. That is why the decision feels mature rather than sentimental. It's not blind devotion, it's calculated loyalty. Big difference. One of the more interesting details in all of this is the way Leclerc's status inside Ferrari has grown from promising academy talent to central figure to the driver around whom the future is being organized. That progression matters because it changes how every weekend is interpreted. Early in a career, a driver is often judged on flashes. Later, he is judged on standards. Leclerc is now in that second category. The expectation is not whether he can occasionally produce brilliance. The expectation is whether he can sustain elite performance while guiding a team through the grind of a season. That is a heavier role, but it is also the role that creates legends. Ferrari know this, their supporters know this, and Leclerc, for all his age and all the mileage still ahead of him, seems to understand it too. There will always be people who ask whether he should have gone elsewhere, whether a different environment might have brought a title faster, whether a clean reset would have been smarter. Maybe those questions are fair. Formula One is full of alternate timelines, and every driver has to live with the road not taken. But there is a difference between a move that looks smart on paper and a move that becomes meaningful in history. Ferrari have the rare ability to turn a driver into something larger than a statistic, and Leclerc appears willing to keep chasing that possibility. In a strange way, that is the gamble. He could leave and maybe find a more immediate shot somewhere else, or he could stay, help Ferrari sharpen the whole package, and potentially write one of the sport's most satisfying redemption arcs. I am not here to pretend the second path is easy. It's not. It's probably maddening at times. It probably comes with more frustration than a driver would ever admit on camera. But it also comes with the chance to become forever linked to one of the most iconic teams in all of motorsport in the deepest way possible, not just as a quick name on a roster, but as the face of the era that finally brought the prize home. That is a powerful incentive. It's also a very Ferrari incentive. The team has always been bigger than a single result, and that is why success there feels so heavy when it finally arrives. Leclerc clearly wants to be the person who helps carry that weight across the line, and now Ferrari have decided he remains the person they want in the cockpit while they keep chasing that outcome. From the outside, the deal may look like a routine piece of news. Inside the sport, it's much more than that. It's a declaration that the project is still alive. It's a signal that belief remains intact. It's an answer to the question every rival quietly asks whenever a star driver's future comes up. Can this team keep its most important name? Ferrari's answer is yes, and Leclerc's answer is yes too. They are choosing each other again, which sounds simple until you remember how many elite partnerships in this sport never quite make it this far.
So now the real tension shifts forward. Can Ferrari turn this stability into speed? Can they close the gap? Can they give Leclerc the machine that lets all this loyalty become a headline with a trophy attached? That is the part I will be watching most closely, because the contract is the easy chapter. The rest of the book still has to be written, and if Ferrari get it right, this could end up looking like the smartest decision both sides made in years.